They say the ancient world was crude, that early builders worked with rough tools, limited knowledge, and endless time. But when you stand before stones cut so precisely that even a blade cannot slip between them, that story begins to feel like a lie. Massive blocks fitted together without mortar, edges sharper than modern cuts, surfaces smooth to near perfection. These are not the marks of guesswork. They are the fingerprints of a lost mastery of stone. Across distant lands, the same mystery repeats itself. Walls built from stone so tightly joined they seem fused. Blocks weighing more than modern cranes can easily lift, shaped with corners so clean they appear machine-made. The official explanation leans on patience, primitive tools, and sheer labor. But patience alone does not create precision. Labor alone does not explain symmetry that repeats across continents. Precision implies method, and method implies knowledge that we no longer understand. Imagine ancient builders standing before raw rock, not seeing a mountain, but seeing finished architecture hidden inside it. Their tools were simple in appearance, yet the results challenge modern engineering. Some cuts curve smoothly around complex shapes. Others align perfectly across massive distances, as if measured with instruments we assumed did not exist. The stone does not show the chaotic scars of trial and error. It shows intention, repetition, a system. The question is not whether ancient engineers were skilled. The question is whether they possessed techniques that were later lost. Knowledge can disappear faster than stone erodes. When civilizations collapse, their tools rust, their workshops vanish, and their methods die with the last hands that practice them. What survives are the results, silent and immovable, waiting for explanations that never quite satisfy. There is also an unsettling pattern in where this precision appears. It is not everywhere. It clusters in specific sites, specific structures, as if belonging to a particular tradition of builders whose reach was limited but whose skill was unmatched. Later generations built around these structures, copying the form but never quite achieving the same perfection. The difference is visible in the stone itself. Earlier work fits like a puzzle with no gaps. Later additions show rougher joints, wider seams, and compromises that suggest the original methods were no longer known. This implies a break in knowledge. Not a slow improvement over time, but a decline, a moment when the craft of cutting stone with extreme precision was lost, leaving behind monuments that later people could admire but not reproduce. History rarely likes to admit regression. We prefer to imagine a steady climb toward modern mastery. But stone tells a different story. It hints that at some point, humans reach a level of material precision they could not maintain. If that's true, then the monuments are not just ruins. They are messages from a forgotten age of engineering, preserved in stone, because stone remembers what humans forget. Every perfectly cut edge is a question. Every seamless joint is a challenge. The ancient engineers may be gone, but their work still stands, quietly asking how it was done and why the knowledge disappeared. When researchers try to explain this precision, the explanations often feel like they're working backward from disbelief. The story goes that simple tools, guided by extraordinary patience, could slowly shape even the hardest stone into flawless forms. But when you examine certain cuts up close, patience alone stops being a satisfying answer. The surfaces are too smooth. The angles are too consistent. The joins are too exact. Anyone who has worked stone knows that rough tools leave rough signatures. Here, the signatures are clean, deliberate, and repeatable, as if guided by standards rather than improvisation. The pattern of precision also suggests planning at a scale beyond individual craftsmanship. Blocks that fit together across entire walls appear to follow shared measurements, invisible lines of geometry that align across distance and weight. This hints at measuring systems, templates, and training methods that were standardized. You don't get consistency across many workers unless those workers are following the same hidden rules. That means there was a system of knowledge behind the work, not just isolated genius. What makes this more puzzling is that later builders, working in the same regions, failed to match this quality even with improved tools. They try to imitate the forms, but their stones show uneven joints, wider gaps, and reliance on fillers. It's as if they inherited the monuments, but not the methods. This suggests that the craft of extreme precision in stone cutting was not simply difficult. It was fragile. Once the chain of teaching broke, it could not be easily rebuilt. There's also the question of speed. These structures were not the result of centuries of slow carving by a handful of artisans. They were parts of large construction projects, completed within lifetimes. That implies efficient methods. Efficient methods imply tools, techniques, or processes that allowed ancient engineers to shape stone with surprising speed and control. When we fail to reproduce this today without heavy machinery, it doesn't mean it was impossible then. It means the approach may have been different from the one we assume. The disappearance of this knowledge fits a larger pattern seen across ancient history. Techniques tied to specialized communities vanish when those communities collapse. If the precision stonecutters belonged to a small, elite tradition of engineers, their fall would have erased their methods almost overnight. Wars, climate shifts, social upheaval, or simple neglect could have broken the chain of apprentices. Once broken, the knowledge would not linger in written manuals if it had been taught through practice rather than text. Over time, the monuments themselves became mysterious even to the people who lived beside them. They were revered, reused, and sometimes built upon, but never truly understood. Later cultures told stories about giants, gods, or lost ages to explain how such perfect stonework could exist. Myths filled the gap left by missing knowledge. The more the techniques faded, the more supernatural the builders seemed in memory. Once the idea of lost methods is taken seriously, the monuments stop being puzzles and start becoming evidence. They show us not just what was built, but how knowledge can vanish without leaving instructions behind. The stone itself becomes the only surviving manual, written in cuts, seams, and alignments instead of words. When modern engineers try to replicate these results, they often succeed in copying the form, but not the efficiency. The time, energy, and machinery required today feel out of proportion to what ancient societies could realistically spare, which suggests that the original builders approached the problem in a way we no longer consider. This doesn't require imagining futuristic machines or impossible technology. It requires imagining lost processes. Techniques can be simple yet powerful and refined over generations. A specific method of shaping stone, a particular sequence of cuts, a way of preparing surfaces before fitting them together. These can produce results that look miraculous to those who don't know the steps. When such methods are passed down orally and through hands-on training, they leave no paper trail, break the line of teachers, and the method disappears as completely as if it never existed. The precision also hints at a deeper understanding of stone itself. Not all rock behave the same. Different types fracture, grind, and polish in different ways. The ancient engineers appear to have known how to read stone, where it would split cleanly, how it would respond to pressure, how to shape it without causing hidden fractures. This kind of material knowledge is not theoretical. It is learned through long practice, through failure, through an intimate relationship with the material. It suggests generations of experimentation before the monuments we see were ever attempted. Another uncomfortable implication emerges here. If later societies could not reproduce this level of work, it means that technological progress is not a straight line. Skills can peak and then decline. Knowledge can be lost not because it was wrong, but because the conditions that sustained it vanished. Specialized crafts are especially vulnerable. When resources shrink, societies prioritize survival over refinement. Precision becomes a luxury. Over time, even the memory of how to achieve it fades. This reframes how we think about ancient builders. They were not primitive precursors slowly groping toward modern engineering. In some domains, they may have reached a level of mastery we have yet to fully understand. Our modern tools can overpower stone. Their tools had to cooperate with it. That difference in relationship may be the key to why their results look so controlled and ours so forceful. The monuments, then, are not anomalies in a story of progress. They are peaks in a landscape of knowledge that rose and fell. There's another layer to this mystery that rarely gets attention: the organization behind such precision. Perfect stone cutting is not just a technical skill. It is a social one. Large teams must coordinate their work so that blocks shaped in different places and times still fit together flawlessly. That level of coordination requires planning, leadership, shared standards, and a culture that values exactness. Precision on this scale is not accidental. It reflects a society structured around craftsmanship as a core discipline, where builders were trained within traditions that treated stone not as a raw obstacle, but as a medium of expression and permanence. This suggests that the ancient engineers were not isolated geniuses working alone. They were part of lineages, schools of practice, communities where methods were guarded, refined, and transmitted. When such communities collapse, the loss is not just of laborers, but of entire ways of thinking about materials and construction. You can rebuild walls. You cannot easily rebuild a culture of precision once it has been replaced by survival-focused priorities. It also raises an uncomfortable question about what we consider advanced. Modern construction often values speed, scale, and cost efficiency. Ancient construction, at least in these monuments, appears to have valued longevity and exact fit above all else. Their goal was not to build quickly, but to build so well that time itself would struggle to undo their work. This difference in values may explain why their results feel alien to us. We optimize for different outcomes, so our methods do not converge on the same solutions. The result is that even with modern machinery, replicating certain ancient fits feels unnatural. We brute force stone into place, then correct imperfections with fillers and reinforcements. The ancient engineers appear to have aimed for a state where the stone needed no correction. It simply belonged where it was placed. This mindset transforms construction from assembly into sculpting at architectural scale. It requires seeing the finished form before the first cut is made, a level of planning that borders on artistry. When later cultures encountered these structures, they often treated them as sacred foundations. They built on top of them, around them, and beside them, but rarely replaced them. The old stonework was trusted more than new construction. That trust is telling. It implies that even those who came after recognized the superiority of what they could no longer replicate. The monuments became anchors in the landscape, not just physically, but culturally, fixed points around which new societies organize themselves. The deeper implication is that civilizations can inherit greatness they do not understand. They can live among the results of lost knowledge without possessing the knowledge itself. This creates a strange historical illusion. It appears as if progress is always forward because the monuments remain, but the skill that created them may already be gone. By the time all these pieces are seen together, the ancient engineers stop feeling like isolated anomalies and start looking like the visible remains of a much larger, vanished tradition. The precision of their stonework, the consistency of their methods across massive projects, and the sudden decline in quality that follows them point to a knowledge system that once existed, flourished, and then quietly disappeared. The stones are not just constructions. They are fossils of thinking. They preserve not only shapes, but methods of seeing the world, ways of approaching material, structure, and permanence that we no longer practice. This raises an uncomfortable truth about human progress. We like to imagine that once a technique is discovered, it is never truly lost. But history shows the opposite. Writing itself disappeared in multiple cultures and had to be reinvented. Navigation skills faded when long-distance travel declined. Medical knowledge vanished when institutions collapsed. Precision stone engineering may belong to the same category of fragile mastery, dependent on continuous training and social stability. When the chain breaks, the craft breaks with it. The monuments also suggest that ancient engineers did not treat stone as an enemy to be conquered, but as a partner to be understood. Their cuts follow the natural behavior of the material. Their joints distribute stress in ways that reduce the need for reinforcement. Their designs anticipate centuries of pressure, weather, and shifting ground. This implies not just technical skill, but a philosophy of building that prioritizes harmony with material over domination of it. Modern construction often forces materials into shape. Ancient construction, at least in these cases, appears to have shaped plans around what the material wanted to become. If this interpretation is true, then our difficulty in reproducing their precision is not simply a matter of lacking tools. It is a matter of lacking mindset. We approach stone with power. They approached it with understanding. Power can break stone quickly. Understanding can shape it beautifully. The two approaches lead to different results, even when aiming for the same structure. This difference may be why modern reconstructions feel artificial beside ancient originals. We replicate form, but not relationship. There is also a deeper cultural implication. The existence of such precise work suggests societies that invested heavily in craftsmanship as a form of knowledge preservation. Builders were not disposable labor. They were carriers of tradition. Their skills were cultural assets. When societies collapse, those assets are often the first to be lost. Practical survival takes priority over maintaining specialized arts. Over generations, what was once normal becomes extraordinary, and what was once teachable becomes mythical. This pattern reframes how we should look at ancient monuments. Instead of asking, how did primitive people do this? We might ask, what conditions allowed people to become this good at working with stone? The answer likely lies in stable institutions of training, long-term apprenticeship systems, and cultural values that rewarded perfection over speed. These conditions are rare and fragile. When they disappear, the results look impossible to those who inherit only the stone without the system behind it. The final and most unsettling implication is this. If such a high level of material mastery could vanish without leaving written instructions, then much of what we consider permanent knowledge may be far more temporary than we assume. Our technologies feel stable because they are supported by global systems of education, documentation, and industry. But those systems are not guaranteed to last forever. The ancient engineers remind us that knowledge survives only as long as societies protect the structures that carry it forward. The stones remain because stone endures. The methods vanish because human systems do not. Every seamless joint is a quiet record of a mind that once understood how to make it. Every perfect edge is a trace of a hand trained in a tradition that no longer exists. These monuments are not just relics of the past. They are warnings carved into the hardest material on earth, telling us that mastery can be lost as easily as it is gained. If this story changed the way you see ancient monuments, follow Mystery of the Ancients. The next forgotten skill of humanity might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to ask the right question.